Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. Here's one question that people ask me all the time. Can I become an academic editor without a PhD? Absolutely. This week, my podcast guest, Ellen Morgan, shares her journey from teaching middle school English to running an academic editing and coaching agency, Wise Oak Consulting Collaborative. Ellen spills the tea on how she started out editing dissertations, what she did to start attracting clients, how she started her agency, and what other teachers can do to find out if editing is right for them. If you're debating whether or not editing is right for you, then you will love this episode. And if you're already an editor who's been craving community and connection, there's a lot here for you too. If you want more tips to supercharge your editing business and get the clients flowing in, join our monthly membership, Digital Marketing for Freelance Editors. Go to acadiaediting.com/marketing. If you're new to this world and curious to find out more about freelance editing or coaching, head over to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Now, here's my conversation with Ellen. Welcome to Leaving Academia, Becoming a Freelance Editor, the podcast. I'm your host, Paulina Cossette. In 2019, I was a political science professor who was fed up with the stress and hostility of academia, not to mention the low pay. I left my tenure-track job and went from barely surviving to thriving as a freelance academic editor. Today, I own Acadia Editing Services, an editing and coaching business that brings in 6 figures a year. In this podcast, I'll discuss the challenges of academia, what academic editing involves, and what life as a freelancer looks like. If you're willing to jump outside your comfort zone, it is possible to find joy, true flexibility, and a profitable and rewarding career as an academic editor. Thanks for listening. Welcome to the podcast, Ellen.
Thank you, Paulina. It's so nice to be here today.
So you were, before you became an editor, you were a middle school English teacher. Tell us about that journey. How did you leave teaching and get into freelance editing?
So it's not a great story. It doesn't make me look particularly good, but I was a teacher for 6 years. I loved teaching, and then I had a kid. And life happened. Like, we moved from Texas to Minnesota, and I wanted to work part-time as a teacher. That was like my goal when we moved, and I looked for part-time jobs as a teacher and did not find one. So not a success story in that way. And at the same time that I was looking for jobs, I had like 3 different friends of friends ask me just to read over their dissertations. And I did it, and they were pleased with the results. And I thought, well, I haven't found a teaching job, but maybe I can make this work for a while anyway. And I started making it work, and it worked better and better. And I, in that process, took an online course and actually got a certificate that I was, a qualified editor. And also, the next semester, COVID hit and public schools were in lockdown. And I had, at that point, no desire to go back to classroom teaching because I did not want to teach online. And I was enjoying being home more with my son. And I decided to make editing my career path instead of going back to teaching. So kind of embarrassingly, it's a story of I failed. I didn't get the job I wanted. And this fell in my lap, and I found that I liked it. And so that's what I've been doing for the past 6 years, if you count, from the time I edited my first dissertation, or 5 years from the time that I committed to it and made a website and started calling myself a professional editor.
That's so interesting. I think our stories sort of parallel each other because I left academia in 2019, right after I had my son. And I was working 7 days a week and just drowning, trying to keep up with everything. And we moved to Maine to be closer to family, and I couldn't find a non-academic job. I knew I didn't want to go into teaching, and there aren't a lot of options locally to where we are in terms of colleges. And so I tested out copy editing because I had just worked with a copy editor, for the publisher for my book. And so, yeah, a lot of similarities there. I totally resonate with that feeling of failure that you mentioned, that I have all these skills and experience. I'm a nice person. I think most
Yeah.
people like me. Like, why won't anyone hire me?
Yeah.
And I definitely went through that. I think a lot of people do. And yeah, and then just sort of the serendipitous discovery of editing and how fun it can be, and how successful you can be at it. So that's great to hear. I'm curious. So you said that just by chance you had other friends who were getting a PhD who had you read over their dissertation or maybe make some comments or something. If there are other K through 12 teachers out there who don't have a PhD, I know there's a lot of uncertainty and self-doubt about, can I do this? What would you say to a K through 12 teacher who doesn't have a PhD, who is thinking about academic editing or maybe nonfiction or something like that? How can they go about figuring out if this is right for them? And maybe how could they approach some people if they don't have friends who are getting PhDs?
So I feel like there's a lot to that question. So first, thinking about like if you don't have a PhD. I don't have a PhD. I do have an MEd, and I feel like that is helpful when I'm working with people in the academic sphere, especially people who are getting education degrees. And I do work with quite a few people who are pursuing their EDDs. So the MEd is helpful, but it's not necessary. Some of the other editors, or two of the other editors at Wise Oak, don't have PhDs, and it mostly has not been an issue. Like, we have had one guy ever say, "You don't have a PhD, then I don't want to work with you." And honestly, it was kind of like he was rude in other ways, and like, okay, good riddance. You're not the client for us. And I'm sure he found someone else who suited his needs.
Apologies to that editor to deal with it.
So the PhD just hasn't been necessary. I was an English teacher, so I taught grammar. One year I had 7th grade writing. That was my class that I had. And in Texas, that's a tested subject. There's a 7th grade writing STAR test. So I taught quite a bit of grammar, and that was helpful to me as an editor. It was also a little harmful in some ways, because the way that we teach 7th graders grammar is not necessarily the way that it needs to be edited. Like, I've discovered some things that, I taught that as a hard and fast rule, and it's just not. But still, that awareness of grammar is really helpful. That is something that teachers can apply from being an English teacher to being an editor. That said, as I've talked to some teachers who are considering moving into editing, it's not something that is for everybody. I think there's a certain amount of soul searching that should go into it. And for me, again, that soul searching just happened in the field, like on the job, that would be the word for it, like as it was happening. But I'm very like deadline motivated, and that works well as an editor. And not everybody is that. Like, a lot of the other, or not a lot, but some of the other teachers I was working with, were really excited by just being in the classroom. The deadlines were not a motivator for them. And so editing might not be the freelance job for them. But if you are a teacher and you feel like, you can work well with deadlines, you can work well by yourself, and you have that eye for the English language, the PhD is really not a limiting factor. Plus, there are so many different types of editing that you can go into.
Yeah, that's a great point. I think that definitely understanding language and writing, being a strong writer, being detail oriented is very important, but also the side where you have to have strong organizational skills, organization and meeting the deadlines, like you said, that is super important. And being able to juggle multiple projects at the same time, or at least like scheduling them out in advance and having a sense of,
Yes.
okay, I can finish this project in 3 days, then I've got to do that one in 2 days, and then this book is going to take a month, or, whatever the case may be.
And that is absolutely a skill that teachers have that they can apply to editing. Like I always had multiple things going on, always had multiple projects. Plus, it is technically a small business with all of the baggage of being a small business and needing to do my finances. And I still don't feel like I have as many things going on as I did at any one time when I was a teacher. Like at least I'm doing all that, and there aren't 30 other humans in the room needing my love and attention. Like my attention is less stretched than now than it was when I was a teacher. So yeah, teachers could definitely handle that.
Yes, absolutely. I was so in my editing community the other day, somebody was we had our first meeting of our January cohort of becoming an academic editor, where mostly it's academics and faculty, or people who've just finished their PhD. They're learning how to become an editor or a coach. And somebody said, I'm scared of quitting my academic job completely and going into editing because it may be too much work. Is it going to be more than I can handle? And I thought, I have never been half as stressed out editing as I was when I was teaching, because like so much of it is exactly what you said, that we do so much emotional labor as instructors in a classroom.
Yes.
Where you're having to manage all these personalities. When you go to faculty meetings, you're having to manage all these personalities, and it's exhausting. And yeah, you have a lot of balls in the air as an editor, but everything that you do is for you. You're getting paid back for that effort, whether
Mm-hmm.
you're spending time working on your business or whether you're editing projects and actually getting paid for it. Everything is for you, and your emotions that you pour into it come back to you, as opposed to like pouring from an empty cup all the time.
And there's still emotional management. Like I get stressed when I'm up against a deadline, but I find that rather invigorating. So like it's fine. And I do still have to manage writers' emotions as they're stressed, or, for dissertation writers, when their advisors have given them negative feedback. There's emotional management, but it's one-on-one. And typically, writers come back and they tell me, like, thank you so much. You were so wonderful. And I just need constant affirmation and praise. And I did not get that as a teacher. And as an editor, it fills my cup.
Yeah.
Like I shouldn't need that. That's definitely something, to work on as a human, but I do, and I get it. And it feels really good.
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot, about why do those of us who teach, well, whatever level, why do we struggle so much in it, that we eventually leave and do something else? And I think there's a very important aspect of the emotional side of things, that we are just people who are givers, and we give so much. And then when you don't get anything back, that's when the burnout really sinks in. So that's a really interesting point. I'm curious, so you started editing. How did you build your business in those first few years before you started your agency? How were clients finding you? Were you going out? Like, was there a lot of hustle? What were you doing to start to grow that base of clients?
I grew very slowly and honestly with quite a bit of privilege. So I am connected through friends and family to academics, and they heard about me through my existing network. And I posted about it on my personal Instagram and my personal Facebook, and they heard about me that way. I also had the ability to grow slowly. I took another couple of online jobs, like, a really terrible English teaching job online. So I had some backup option, like some backup income coming in. And yeah, so I was able to grow that way. And then I talked to writing center directors or directors of the grad school. So especially at Texas Tech University, because that's where I went for my master's. I got on their list of editors, so they gave my name to people. And the same thing at Texas A&M University. I got on their list of approved editors, and then people could find me just by searching online. So if you're interested in becoming an academic editor, those universities that you have like alumni connections with are good places to start. Just like put your name on their approved list. A lot of them keep lists whether they're published or not, and then do good work, and they'll keep sending people to you. And now I'm on list at more universities, but I started really slow just with those two. About a year later, I created a website for myself. I created it with YouTube videos from scratch. It was so difficult. 7 years ago, I would have said that was absolutely not in my skill set. And now it is. And it's not the greatest website ever, but it's highly presentable, I would say. So that was like stage 2, I guess. And then I had a friend come to me and say, I'm getting a PhD and I'm realizing I don't want to be a professor full time. So I'm sure you've heard that story. And she and I decided to work together. And that was the start of the agency. And then she and I made it into an LLC to make it official. And then we had more people ask about, one person wanted to was leaving teaching and wanted to come be an editor. And one person was adjuncting and needed more income and has joined our agency as well. So we've kind of collected clients along the way and collected editors to join the agency along the way. And having an agency has been just really helpful because we are able to pool the cost of our client portal and the resources that we use among all of us. And that helps us keep our prices down. And we have friends or coworkers, because editing alone in my basement can feel very isolated. And so having people that I know are working with me helps that a bit anyway. So started off growing really small and then made it official by making a website and getting on list, and then grew. People just wanted to work with me and we registered as an LLC. So
that's awesome. There's so many great nuggets in there that I want to pull out. You mentioned the dissertation lists and emailing writing centers, and that's one of the top pieces of advice that I recommend to new editors because it's so easy to do. It takes so little time. You just, I call them ETD lists, the electronic thesis and dissertation lists, because usually the offices either go by that name or the formatting office or something like that. And I tell people just email them. If you have a one-page resume, send it along, ask to be added to the list. I started with the schools where I went to as well, because I think they really want to help their alumni to get more business. But yeah, you spend 10 minutes sending an email and then sending them whatever information they need. And your name is on the website forever. I mean, I got my name listed on these websites 3 or 4 years ago, and I get emails every semester from grad students who need help formatting their dissertation.
Yes. And I should say, I'm married to a writing center director. I try not to use that as that connection much because it just doesn't make me feel good to use that privilege. But I think writing center directors are just the nicest people in the world. So for the most part, even if they say no, they'll be very polite emails. I did get one email back from a writing center director that just said no. And my husband and I still think that's hilarious that a writing center director actually said that, just no. But that was the worst thing that can happen if you just cold email people. And even that wasn't that bad. It was just it was funny.
Maybe they were having a bad day, or at least they could have just deleted your email. So I guess at least you got a response.
Yeah, I guess so.
I think that's super helpful. And I think editing dissertations is a great way to start too. Like we were saying earlier, if you're not sure you want to do this full time, just get your name on a few of those lists and, edit them. Even if you charge a low rate, no problem. At least you're making some money and you're figuring out if this is the kind of thing you want to spend your days doing. It's very low risk. You're not going to get a bad reputation if you make some mistakes or something as a beginner.
And for the most part with dissertations, I do get some that are excellent to start with, but a lot of them aren't, if they're asking for help, they need help. And so even if you don't get it all exactly right, because, I think back to some of the first ones I did and think I did not know that rule. I messed it up, but I still made it better, so much better for them. And, yeah, so it's a good place to start.
Yeah, I think a lot of having a lot of empathy for the situation that they're in. They're at the end of their program. They've been doing this for years. They're desperate to just graduate and be done with it. And yeah, anything that you can do to help goes. Their students, I find, are very appreciative because they just are struggling and really could use the help.
And a lot of people that I work with are not just students. They are students and also principals or students, and they're actively working in their field. They are returning to their PhDs after having kids. So they have just a lot on their plates. And as an editor, I can help them. I can take some of that burden off them. I can format their paper for them. I can be the final set of eyes to proofread it and, help them save some time that they really need.
Yeah, those are great points. And I have to disagree with you on one thing. Your website is phenomenal.
Oh,
you said you made it. It's beautiful. Everybody should go there. I have it right here. It's wiseoakconsultingcollaborative.com. If you are struggling with setting up your website and you're listening to this or watching on YouTube, go right now to this website and take a look at it. It's fantastic. The visuals are great. The one-liner at the top, "We help your writing grow." That's super, just stands out, really grabs your attention. So I think it's great. I think it's a great model. I actually already sent it to the people in my community and said, "Hey, look at this and see what a great job she did." So
thank you.
And the other thing, you mentioned that it can be really isolating to be an editor. And I totally felt that. I think I launched my Becoming an Academic Editor course this summer in July. And before that, I was definitely, after doing this for a few years, editing in my basement too, I felt I really miss having conversations with people and, just talking about talking shop. And I found that course. Plus, I started a community called Digital Marketing for Academic Editors, where we just launched this month. And that's also really helpful. We meet once a month on Zoom, and we're able to chat on our Slack channel and talk on the Zoom call and just have that space to interact with people who understand. So it's great to hear that you get that as well from your agency.
Yeah. It definitely, that community is necessary.
So how does running an agency work? So you talked a little bit how you have a client portal and you're sharing some of the business expenses. Do you each advertise or market for your own to bring in clients to the website in general, or are you taking the lead on the marketing, or how has that worked for you all to divide up those roles?
So I'll tell you how it's working for us, and I'll also say that it's constantly a work in progress. I take the lead with marketing because I have been doing it for longest, and so I have the largest network, and also because part of other people joining the agency is because they don't want to have to be in charge of marketing. We are all separately on just different university lists, depending on our affiliations. So they come in, clients come into the portal, and they may ask for a particular editor, or they may say just whoever's available. I don't care. And especially because we have an agency, we're able to fit in more projects even if sometimes that means that one of us does like the references list and one of us reads the dissertation, the clients always know who is working with them. They always, at least after the initial onboarding, they always communicate directly with that editor. So it's not like one of the big editing farm type sites that, somebody faceless, who knows. The clients know exactly who they're working with. And the only time that would switch is if one of us gets sick. So that's another benefit to having an agency, is like we at least have some kind of sick leave, kind of like, we can pass it off to somebody else if we really need to. Yeah. And then some other like organizations that work with us know that there is a group of us who are able to take on, for example, we have 2 really big projects that we've gotten every summer for the last several years. And we just would not have time to take on that size project, except that we're able to split it up over 3 or 4 people. So.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah. No, okay. Yeah, I was curious about the logistics of it, and I also saw on your website that you all do some coaching. Can you talk about that a little bit?
So far I'm mostly the one doing the coaching. We had somebody else who was working with us and doing quite a bit of coaching, and then she needed to move on. I actually have a call this afternoon with somebody who is in the process of writing her dissertation, and she just needs help with writing. And I feel like that's one skill set that I can bring as a teacher, and certainly professors would have that skill set to bring over too, that she's got a lot of really good research, a lot of good ideas, but she's just never been a confident writer. And so the writing coaching is a lot like what you would do in a writing center session, talking her through her ideas and organizing her paper. No, like we don't do dissertation writing, of course. We're coaching her. We also do grammar coaching. So we have dissertation students who are not native speakers of English, or they don't speak English as their home language. And they want to understand how English works so they can use it better. And they'll meet with me particularly on Zoom, and we'll workshop their paper, the grammar in their papers together, so they can learn about grammar. And I'm sad and also pleased to say that quite a few of those writers don't meet with me anymore, because in our last sessions, they said, I get it. I understand, I've had my questions answered and I feel like I'm doing better. And maybe I should have like made them a diploma or something, but they've kind of like, they've graduated the coaching. I also run an in-person workshop at the University of Minnesota. It's like a 10-week write your journal article workshop. And that's classic, in-person workshop.
Is that for grad students or faculty or both?
It's for grad students right now. We've talked about making another one for faculty, but right now it's just a small cohort of grad students each semester. They're all in the biomedical engineering realm. And yeah, they're working on publishing journal articles, and I teach them how to do it.
Oh, that's awesome. It's great to hear how you've expanded. You started with just editing dissertations, and then you've expanded to working with, companies or nonprofits or other sort of non-academic type groups, and then doing the workshops and the coaching. And I just love that about this business, that you can start small as an editor, being very focused, and then sort of take it in any direction that you want. If you, as a teacher, I'm sure you probably miss teaching, and now you're able to engage in that and do it, but in a much more appreciative, positive environment.
Yes. And that has been really helpful in my business, that I have a niche. Like, my main focus is working with people who are coming from education, but that niche is really good for marketing, as I'm sure you talked about in your digital marketing, to have a focus. But I also expand beyond that. So I have multiple income streams. And, it's intellectually stimulating to read about lots of different things. And yeah, there is some income security because it's not all reliant on one program or a handful of programs to get students from. It's coming from a lot of different places.
Yeah, and it breaks up your weeks, I'm sure, with, you're spent a lot of time editing, staring at a computer screen, but then you're able to go to this in-person workshop and lead that, or to hop on Zoom and talk with people. And
Yes.
I think it really helps the brain. I don't know what I'm trying to say now, but it helps you expand your mind, and just get that stimulation from all these different types of interactions and activities. Clearly, my brain needs to be a little more stimulated this morning.
As much as I love to sit and read, sitting and reading for 8 hours a day is too exhausting for me to do. So having lots of different types of activities helps.
Well, this has been a great conversation. Thank you so much for talking about your journey and your agency and what you've built there. And so I always close out every episode by asking, what are a couple pieces of advice that you would give to new editors in general to help build their businesses?
So I would advise you to start out by taking some kind of course. So I know you have one. I took the Edit Republic course. Yours did not exist when I was jumping in. There are a lot of great courses. There's another one on the ACES website that's the Pointer course that's good to take. But take a course so that you feel confident. And then you can try it by setting a really low rate, but don't stay there. Don't lowball yourself for too long, and do give yourself permission to raise your rate and grow from there. I think that is probably the biggest struggle that I continue to have, is being willing to raise my rate. And yeah, I think that's my two pieces of advice. Have some confidence.
Absolutely, on raising your rates. I hate seeing academic editors who've been doing this for years charging like 2 cents a word to edit and format a dissertation. And I'm going, why are you doing this to yourself? You should be charging way more than that. Especially if you're working with faculty, who have research funds or something. I try to keep my rates lower for grad students because I know what it's like to be a poor grad student, but definitely with faculty. Yeah. And I mean, every year we should be raising our rates, right? I mean, groceries are going up, the cost of gas is everything is going up. So, it's not fair to restrict ourselves by always keeping the rates the same. So thank you. That's great advice. So if people want to work with you, how should they get in touch?
So go to my website, wiseoakconsultingcollaborative.com, or just wiseoakcollaborative.com. Or you can email me, ellen@wiseoakcollaborative.com. Either way, you can look at either of those places to work with me, or if you just want to chat about becoming an editor, you can email and I'll, give you my advice for what it's worth, and I'm happy to talk.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Ellen. It's been a pleasure talking with you.
Thank you, Paulina. It was really good to talk to you too.
If you're unhappy in academia and you think you might be a good editor or writing coach, check out my course, Becoming an Academic Editor. This digital course is paired with a 12-week group coaching program to support you through your decision to leave academia or not, and to start building a profitable and rewarding academic editing business. Learn more by going to acadiaediting.com/become an editor. Thanks again for listening. I'll see you next time.